no one has really taught me how I should learn math. It's always just do the practice problems or do the textbook and just do it and it'll come naturally to you. But just like learning anything new, you have to have systems and a solid understanding of how you should learn this topic. So in this video, I hope to teach you um, how how I approach math class this year, my senior year of high school. Although it's probably the least important year of high school, I think I figured out at least one thing that has really helped boost my grade. Um, for the first 3 years of high school, I really struggled with math. Uh, if you ask my freshman self, uh, he would have said, "Oh, I'm good at math," but I really wasn't. I was getting C's and D's, and this continued throughout my sophomore and junior year, and it was especially bad my junior year, where I got the worst grades in my entire math career in high school. That was a really difficult time because I didn't understand really what I was going wrong. Like, was the past like 10 years of me doing math just like have I been doing it all wrong for 10 years? And the answer to that is yes. Um, I figured out something this year uh, that I realized I knew all along, but I just couldn't put it into words. And no one really taught me this. I had to figure this out on myself. So I hope this video will at least help you with anything actually. Just maybe to improve your math grade or maybe you just want to learn something new. I don't know. But this video is basically about how I approach math and just I'll give you an example of what I do to get a good grade in math class. Uh, just so you know the like results based off like what I've done. Um, in my junior year, I got C's, D's, and F's. This year, I've only managed to get one D, but the rest of the grades were all solids, A's, and B's. I'm not the smartest student. I'm a pretty average student. Um, that one D, I think, was just me not studying hard enough. I was lazy and I procrastinated. I underestimated how hard the test was going to be. But really, my improvement in grades from like C's and D's to like solid A's and B's. Uh, there's one test in particular. I did the method I came up with perfectly actually. Like I did everything I was supposed to be in, and I got 100 on it. I think that was my first 100 in 2 years. So I'm not a genius in math. I, I I would consider myself average, if not below average, in math capabilities. But I figured out something that really helped me, and I hope it can help you too. So this video will basically be about my system of approaching math, and maybe you can learn something from it. So to get started, math is basically, you can think of it as like a house. You have to have a solid foundation of math, and everybody has a solid foundation. Um, Everyone should have a solid foundation of math. This is your arithmetic, your basic multiplying and adding, subtracting, dividing, etc. You learn this pre-puberty age, like probably like when you're like elementary school or even preschool. Then, as you progress, math really builds up on itself, and there's pillars of math that really need to be strong. Really need you 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 need to understand these pillars to really build the foundation of math. And this is pretty one-dimensional way of viewing it, but probably the simplest way I could come up with this model. Um, so if you really don't have a solid foundation of the mathematical concepts, you will probably struggle or probably do very poorly in math class or just fail to understand where these math models come from. With that in mind, um, it's important to acknowledge that if you're struggling in a class and you don't have a solid foundation or a solid understanding of the material, you really should either drop a level in class, which I know you can do in high school, or you should move to a different class. Um, because you really need to have a strong understanding or even a somewhat solid understanding of what this mathematical concept is, and most importantly, how it functions and connects to everything that you'll learn throughout the rest of the year. So this year I'm taking calculus, and to be honest, calculus is a lot easier than pre-calculus for this method especially. Um, Although I can't really say that now that I think about it because I never did this system in junior year. In fact, I didn't do any system in junior year. I just blindly just took notes and stuff like that. But how you should really do this is just the most important thing is you have to have a strong pillar of understanding. For example, if you're doing a chapter of calculus, let's say your chapter it's on integrals. It's on integrals and you really got to know where integrals come from. So this is the most important part. I think this was chapter 6 in my class. And if you don't know what integrals are, you're already screwed. So I think the first pillar of this chapter especially is integrals. Just understanding what it is and really just like being able to like picture it and explain it in words. So if you don't have a solid understanding of what integrals are, I won't explain every single mathematical concept in this video because that would take way too long. I'm just gonna um, just this is just an example of how I take my notes. So for chapter 6, it's gonna be about integrals. Then when you're taking notes in class, just just do the problems. Just write. So, for example, my teacher writes down the problems by hand, and then we go over it. So it's like a word problem or like numbers, and it's part A. And then we just do it. We do it. And then say like you make a mistake with like dropping a negative here. So then you would draw. I would draw an arrow, and I would start and say, "Don't drop the negative. Drop. Don't drop the negative." And then you just underline that. Then you keep on going, keep on solving, keep on solving. Right. When you go through your note sheet, make sure it's in systematical order. So when you take notes, it should be up and down, and on the sides, you should have little notes to yourself of what you did wrong during that class or what you did well. Um, so that's what you would do during class. Say, I know a lot of people are tired during math class or just bored, but try to make a conscious effort. If you really care about your grade, just make a conscious effort to really pay attention to what the teacher says. For example, um, my teacher especially drops hints in between his sentences of what he's going to put on the test. So when he says that, write down, say this is your piece of paper, write down at maybe the top right corner what the format of the test is. What the format of the test is. Just if it's going to be like 8 problems and 2 parts for each problem or something like that. Write it down there. So when you go back to study it, um, you can like visualize how you're going to take it, and if you run into difficulties, where you're going to go from there. So I think taking notes is the easiest part of math class. You just have to sit through it, make sure you understand what's going on, and just pay attention to the teacher. It's really not that difficult. But the system I implemented for improving my math grade especially, um, this class is, I would say, medium difficulty. It isn't very challenging if you put in the work. So what you do is you take 2 sheets of blank paper, maybe like 3 days before the test, because you have to maybe study, like just like even for 10 minutes or 20 minutes, a couple of days before the test so you really understand. You take two pieces of paper and say for chapter 6 integration, just write down everything you remember. Just everything you remember. Just no connections whatsoever. Just write down everything you remember, like formulas, what this does, what that does. Just write it all down. And then um, from there, what you do is you draw like maybe like a dividing line, maybe, and then you write down what you absolutely 100% should know, right? I think this is the most important part because you really need to understand what's going on in this chapter and how they connect to each other, but most importantly, how they connect to like math as a whole, maybe like the textbook as a whole. So, for example, for chapter 6, what you would do, I don't know, this is just based off a note sheet, would be like integration and then integration techniques, like by parts, tabular, and U substitution. That's what you have to know in I class at least. And Fling integration. And you would write all of that down here. And once you have that down, you write down maybe some things you need to memorize. For example, in this chapter, to use it once again, you would have to memorize every single antiderivative of the trig functions like cosine, sine, and cosecant, and how you would do them. Then you would then from there just write everything down. That's the most important. Just write every single thing down. Then from there, what you do is on a second piece of paper, you would go through your homework. Go through your homework and write down every single thing you got wrong. Every single thing you got wrong. Because what you got wrong, this is what actually matters. Because this is the stuff that you don't want to, don't, these are the mistakes you don't want to make on the test and write why you got them wrong. If you really want to take it a step further, and if you really have time to do this, what you would do is you would take one concept, say integration, and you would draw arrows and really try to connect everything together. So you do like by parts, you do like fling and like U sub or something like that. And you would try to like then from there you would draw an arrow and write down the formula for by parts, write down what you do during fling integration, and really write down what you do during U substitution. This is the most important part. You have to connect everything together. If you can't see how everything is connected together, then it, it will be somewhat, life will be more difficult. But if you can connect everything together or you understand what these pillars come from, then you'll do fine. Now, there are some things, oops, sorry about that. There are some things what I wish I knew when really studying for math. No one really told me this. People just told me a big people just told me is that just do the problems. That is literally the only advice I got when tackling. Only memorable advice I got when tackling math problems. And of course, this is an important, I think it's probably the most important uh, system of mastering, not even mastering, just having a solid foundation of math. But there are certain things that I wish I knew that other people told me that was like just as important. And the first is really be neat and organized. Think this is just as important as doing the problems because if you're not neat and organized, everything is just all over the place and you're just all over the place and it's not pleasant at all. When you're neat and organized and you really have something, even like you staple like notes together, you have it all in like a notebook or a folder. It just really makes life easier. And when I'm talking about neatness, I'm not talking about just being neat, like having things in folder. I'm talking about your handwriting also. Make sure when you're taking notes, especially in class, that you make a conscious effort to be neat and also be organized when you do your homework. Because if you don't see what you did wrong doing your homework, then what is really the point of doing the homework? The second is change, really change your. I think this is the most trite saying when faced with like test anxiety, but you got to change your mindset. And one thing you can do this is that when you do something right, just say like, oh, say like, write like a nice job. Write like nice job next to it. Like if you get everything right in the homework, say nice job. I remember I got like every single problem in the homework right, and I wrote at the top of it like nice job, and I wrote like 100. And it really like helps you. And you're like the day before the test when you're like, oh, I'm not prepared for it. Or like, oh, I'm so bad at math and I suck and everybody's so smart. It really helps to just like just say nice things to yourself because the little things you say during like your homework and your preparation really add up to like during test day. And just know that during test day, if you really don't know how to do a problem or something, it's not the end of the world. It really isn't. Just make sure that you just become prepared as possible so you don't have to get that feeling. And if you do, it's okay. It's not the end of the world. The third thing is that study guide for yourself and study outside and make like external resources. I think this is just as important. When you see math in one dimension, say how the teacher does it. How the teacher does it, it's really difficult to connect that to like another concept if you don't understand this fundamental aspect or system of how this problem works. But if you go to like say like even like other YouTube videos or things like that, like I know organic chemistry tutor, he's really good at explaining difficult concepts really simply. Um, like outside resource and take notes on those. And if you have time before you go to class, read what the teacher is going to teach during that day and just watch the video before it so you understand what the teacher is saying and you're not complete lost during class. Math isn't supposed to be done one way. It can be done an infinitely amount of ways. I think that Richard Feynman invented his own technique of integration at MIT and it was actually easier than how integration is taught at high school. You can literally invent your own way of doing math as long as the systems make sense and they follow the basic mathematical laws, then it's really fine. Like, um, just do things that make sense to you, but make sure that you just at least make a conscious effort to understand that you have to be neat and organized. You know, you have to have a good mindset around it and just make a study guide for yourself. Now, just a summary of everything. One, the most important thing is that math is structural. If you don't understand one concept, you won't understand the next one because everything connects together. Everything is a web. You can really think about it as like a web or something like that. Everything connects together. And if you don't understand one concept competently enough, then you will understand the rest of the class. Two, math class is not difficult. If you find it way too difficult for you, especially in high school, drop a level in the class. I made this mistake very, very late in my high school career, and I realized I should have done it a lot sooner. If it's very difficult, just drop the level and go at your own pace. Who cares how smart other people are? Really, if you see some guy, he's like, oh, the test was easy, and you thought it was hard, who cares? Really go at your own pace. Make sure you understand it solidly enough, and make sure you truly understand why the teacher is teaching you in a certain way, and how maybe you could do it a different way. I think the stigma that math class should be insanely difficult, I think is just completely just stupid. If you find it extremely difficult, then just drop a level or just don't take that class anymore. It really isn't that big of a deal. And if you're forced to take that class and you can't drop it or something, then you should maybe find a way to make it easier for you. If the moment you say that it should be difficult, your brain already shuts off because your brain does not like difficult things. It likes to do things that are easy. So, math class math class really shouldn't be that difficult. If you get, say, like a poor grade like once or twice, maybe even like 3 or 4 times, it isn't that big of a deal. Number three, come up with your own way of doing things. No one taught any of this to me. I figured all of this out by myself, mostly through failure and mostly through just very, very difficult class sessions, and it was just and really bad teachers. No one really taught this to me. Um, I figured this out for myself, and it's not perfect by any sense, but it's so obvious to me now, and I just couldn't put it into words what these things were and why they were really important. The only advice people gave me was just do the problems, and you really have to figure this out for yourself. I guess a fourth thing that you could really say is that do the do the extra things. Go outside of class and just 1 or 2 minutes. You just like like a math video isn't that long. It shouldn't be. It should be like 3 to 5 minutes. Understand the concept, understand the formulas of it. It's not too bad. Really, math class in general is not that difficult. If you have a difficult teacher, get out of there. I just gotta say that from anybody from our high school that I don't know how the hell you could come across this video, but don't listen to what other people have to say about math. Really do what makes sense to you. If a teacher does it some way and you do it a different way, it's perfectly okay if that way aligns with mathematical law and like really if it really makes sense. Essentially, if you're doing it a different way, it really isn't anything different. It's just different from what the teacher is doing. A teacher in another school might teach it your way. It's just you got to figure out things for yourself. And it's okay to be the dumbest person in class, or if you don't know the answer, But you really got to come up with a system of doing things, not a goal. Your goal shouldn't your goal should not be to get straight A's. You should create a system where you can achieve straight A's no matter what. Eh, Because goals, you won't these are things like 100 on a test is something you can't control. But what you can control is how you approach things, what your mindset is around it, and really how you do things in an organized and neat fashion. That's what's really important. This is basically how I brought my math grade from C's and D's to solid A's and B's. By no means am I perfect, and I really hope that something in this video maybe helped you just a little bit. If it just helped you a little bit, I'm so happy. Um, of course, I'll probably add to this list in the coming years when I go through college or to go through my job and things like that. But math, arithmetic, calculus, geometry, trigonometry, everything I've learned so far has been taught to me the wrong way, and I'm finally beginning to see how I should teach it to myself. Um, so in the end, just come up with whatever makes sense to you and just believe in that, and in the end, it really doesn't matter, and you'll be fine. If if the fact that you're watching this video shows that you already care enough about math and you like it enough to watch this video, and guess that's all from me. See you next time.